What was Stacey like as a child?
Very inquisitive, not afraid of anything, always asking questions.
Always asking why?
Yes, she was only allowed 3 whys in a day sometimes.
I know I was very stubborn and headstrong even as a kid, so my mom had her work cut out.
And because was never an answer. She'd tell you, that's not an answer, Mom. Why?
Because I wanted to know why. And because I said so, that's not an answer.
Do you find yourself asking why, even today?
Oh, absolutely, especially today. Because I don't understand how my life became what it is today.
Police Communications, can I help you?
My name is Stacey Castor. My husband didn't show up to work this morning. I don't know what's going on. I'm just getting a little concerned because I haven't talked to him since 5 o'clock in the morning on Sunday when he locked me out of the bedroom.
This whole story begins with a call to 911, August 22nd, 2005. It's a call involving a husband, and on that phone is a frantic wife. Her name is Stacey Castor. And she tells the operator at the other end of the line that her husband has not come out of his bedroom really all weekend long.
Stacey Castor was stating that her husband, David Castor, had locked himself in the bedroom. Over the course of the weekend, he had been drinking, he wasn't acting right.
Has he ever mentioned hurting himself or harming himself or?
Friday night when we were arguing, he told me to get out, take my kids and get out. I could leave, and then 5 minutes later he said if I left he would make me sorry. I would be sorry if I ever left him.
And she called 911 to have deputies respond and see what was going on.
Detective Dom Spinelli was the lead investigator on this.
When I arrived, I recall Stacey being outside. She was pretty visibly upset. One of the things Stacey was concerned about was that David had a shotgun under his bed. And she was worried that he might have committed suicide. Deputy Willoughby entered the residence and the bedroom door was locked.
I bang on the door, don't get any response. I kick the door in.
We walked into the bedroom and I observed David lying on his stomach across the bed.
It was really an incredible scene. They find David Castor, the husband, on the bed, no clothes on, and he's dead. Stacey Castor had said on that phone that she was worried about what her husband might have done to himself.
And she asked me if he's okay. And all I said was, no, he's not. The paramedics go in the room, they come back out, and at this point she's screaming, have him come back, he's not dead, he's not dead.
Stacey was just crying a lot. I mean, distraught and physically upset, that you could see that she was struggling with her emotions.
The whole thing is very tragic. Very.
When police first answer that 911 call and find David Castor naked, dead in his bedroom, their first question is, who was David Castor?
David was very conscientious, very work-driven, was very into outdoors. He had snowmobiles and four-wheelers and a boat. David was support and strength and security to me.
David Castor was Stacey Castor's second husband, her knight in shining armor.
He has his own business, a heating and air conditioning company.
Stacey Castor was the typical Syracuse, New York woman, like so many of us.
She has 2 daughters, Ashley and Bree, who are teenagers from a previous marriage. And he was married once before too, and has a grown son, David Jr. For both David and Stacey, this was their second chance at happiness, and their friends were really rooting for them.
Stacey felt like a princess. Stacey felt this was a fairy tale. You know, she was loved, she was treated like a lady.
You fell in love with him?
Yes.
And you decided to get married?
Yes.
And how did the girls feel about that?
They weren't happy about it.
Why weren't they happy?
They didn't want their father replaced.
At first, we really didn't like him. He said he didn't want to be our father and he didn't want any part of being a father. He already had his kids and he didn't want more.
So there was tension?
There was, but half the time it was brought on by him.
David was difficult with the kids. He expected them to do everything that he said without question. And being my children, they questioned everything. But David and I had a very good relationship.
There wasn't fighting?
There's no such thing as a perfect marriage, and we had our share of issues that we dealt with. And obviously being a blended family, it made that much more to have to deal with.
August 2005, David wanted to go on vacation with Stacey alone to celebrate their anniversary.
We always closed the shop the last 2 weeks of August and took vacation. And he wanted to go on a pretty extensive trip. And he kind of waited to the last minute to decide that. And Ashley obviously wouldn't be able to go because she was working and couldn't take the time off of work. And I didn't want to leave Bree home alone for 2 weeks. And yes, there was an argument about that.
It got pretty bad. Stacey says they had a 7-hour argument in the garage.
Well, according to Stacey, David got upset, took the bottle of Southern Comfort, went into the bedroom and locked himself in, and reportedly got drunk, wouldn't come out.
I encouraged her to come over because she was just, you know, so distraught the entire weekend.
She made the assumption, she told me, that he was either sleeping it off because he'd been inebriated the whole weekend or was simply sleeping.
She kept going over there to check on him. She said she put her ear up to the door. She heard him snoring, so she knew he was in there sleeping.
But he wasn't sleeping. He was actually in the process of dying that weekend.
On the nightstand next to the bed was a short glass, half full of a green liquid, another glass that had some remnants of some juice, an apricot brandy bottle. There was a cranberry juice bottle there too.
And then underneath the bed, there was a bottle of antifreeze that was on its side with the top off.
I remember standing in the kitchen and speaking with one of the members of the sheriff's office, had observed a turkey baster lying in the garbage can.
And I noticed that it's got droplets inside it. So I pick it up and I pull the rubber bulb off it and I smell it, and I can smell alcohol in it. I know he's been drinking. I know alcohol was involved. I know antifreeze was involved.
People have committed suicide in the past by drinking antifreeze. It's not a pleasant way to go.
They thought that this idea, this notion of a suicide, was really quite plausible. It's what the wife had told them, Stacey Castor.
Stacey had told me that David had been depressed because he had recently lost his father, and that possibly his drinking and suicide that weekend was as a result of him being depressed about his father's death.
So at this point, you have Stacey Castor, who is a grieving widow, seemingly trying to be strong and carry on for the sake of her 2 daughters.
She gets on the phone and she's like, I have to tell you something. And I was like, what? And she's like, David killed himself. And I was like, what? Why would he kill himself? Like, I didn't know really that he was hurting like that.
This case could very well have closed and ended, and everyone would have thought that David Castor killed himself. This was a suicide. But for people who knew David Castor, suicide, it just didn't make sense.